In today's eMoney tip of the week, I'm going to talk to you about whether or not to use the fee feature when you're using client accounts in eMoney. What I'm about to go through is a heated topic of debate. And if you don't understand Monte Carlo, go back and listen to my other tip of the weeks. I'm going to try to get this done in under 10 minutes or less, which I try to do with every Money tip of the week. But I want to give you my why, and please feel free to leave me comments on my LinkedIn or send me messages if you completely disagree with me. But I find that once I get through this, most people tend to agree with me in my assumptions. So I love this feature when it's used the right way, but I think it's used incorrectly. So I've created this sample client called Impact of Fees. And the reason why I create this sample client called Impact of Fees, I want to really just get down to the nuts and bolts. All I've created for this client is their 31-year-old client to give them some growth. I've created an asset that's the Vanguard 500 mutual fund that we have, I think, 250 shares of. I've created an income of $85,000, and I created expenses of $40,000 now and $40,000 in retirement. I'm trying to keep this overly simplified to have this conversation. So what am I talking about first? So when you come and you create any type of an account and you go under advanced here, there's this fees tab. And when I see a lot of advisors that are new to eMoney and they see this, they say it's great. I charge, let's say, 1% for this client, and I want to put a 1% fee inside of here. And so they go ahead and they put this 1% fee in here. And I'm not telling you not to do that. I'm just telling you we don't do that, and I'm going to tell you why. And I want you to think it through before you do it. Because you have to understand what eMoney is inputting here. Now, if you are doing straight line savings, you're going to be a person that follows that type of cash flow, doesn't use Monte Carlo. This fee is actually kind of irrelevant because then you should have this built into your return. This is really for Monte Carlo, and we have to understand what it's doing here. So let's go back and let's understand Monte Carlo first off. I'm going to give you a crash course on this. But if we go here to asset allocation, you'll see that my client has a 9.8% average and a 17.95%. By the way, what I'm about to go through, if you ever don't understand this and you're like, hey, how does this work? You can always go through and read this down here. You can see the asset allocation standard deviation. We'll talk about this. But essentially what this is doing, this is telling you that the risk or the standard deviation, which is what they're using for risk, is 17.95. So let's just for simple math say that this one is 10, and let's say this one's 18. So if that's 18 is your standard deviation, it's saying your average rate of return is 10%. On the high side, it's going to be 28. All right, so you take 10 plus 18. Again, I'm rounding up for simple math here for this illustration. On the low side, we're going to take 8. All right, good. Here, subtract out 10, that's going to be -2. That's when those results are going to fall into place 2/3 of the time. It's going to run 1,000 results in between those probabilities. It's actually going to stand out a little bit. Again, don't believe me here. It's written in plain English for you to see this. All right. What is the fee going to do? The fee is simply, if we're going to charge 1%, it's going to take that arithmetic mean or average and subtract out 1. So at 9.87, if we subtract out 1, that's going to give you an average of 8.87 and still keep the same standard deviation. So it's going to really mess with the results of Monte Carlo. Now here's what I ask those advisors to do that. If you're charging a client a 1% fee, net of that fee, do you expect to get 1% less returns than what those asset allocation mix has done? Because if you believe that, you probably should be charging a 1% fee, and you probably should have a different conversation with the client. So most advisors that I've seen are typically saying to their clients that with net of that 1%, that they should get the average of that over time period. So when you put this 1% fee, you're telling a client that they're going to get less. So if a client has somebody who's charging 0.5% versus 1%, if you want to use that to compare, that makes sense. So where do we use this? We use this a lot of time with variable annuities. So if we're charging a 1% management fee and a client's sub-accounts are 1% on their annuity, that's 0.00. And then what we would put in there is their M&E or mortality and expense, admin fees, and rider fees, because those are going to lower the client's returns compared to if they had it just managed in a different account. Now, if you're going to show your fees, and you're going to compare it to other advisors' fees, again, make sure they're average. So if we charge 1%, an advisor charges 1%, we're not going to share any fees. But if we're working with an advisor that charges 1.5% and we're charging 1%, we're going to add 0.5%. We are going to put this in our observations if we add a fee in there and explain to the client why we're showing that fee. So I always get the people that want to show the impact of fees, and they go under this reports. So again, I showed you what I've built out here. I built out an advanced plan, just so you know it. All I did in an advanced plan was I added a 1% fee in here. So I just took the same exact account that we are contributing money towards, and I just wanted to show them that they're paying a 1% fee inside of here. So now, again, you can see the prior one was 0. If you were trying to show the client the impact of fees, you'd want to go in, and there's a lot of different reports you can show this, but mainly inside the asset report. Okay, now we can see, if we pull this up, compared side by side, now we can see the erosion of fees on a client's wealth over time. But you got to keep in mind, what's this report showing? This is straight line. So this is showing an average rate of return that's pretty unrealistic, in my opinion, and I think most people would tell you. That's showing 9.87. That's 9.87, 9.87, 9.87. So if I really want to compare this, I would actually do a reallocation in here, which I have another eMoney tip of the week where I talk about that, and show a lower rate of return. What this is really designed for Monte Carlo, which is the beauty of eMoney, is Decision Center and Monte Carlo. So what I really want to show is a client, what is the impact of this over time? So you can see right here in our base facts, they're 91%. If they were charged a 1% fee on the exact same investments, that would bring them down to an 86%. That's if they had the same exact investments. By the way, I'm showing them at this high-risk portfolio, 100% in the S&P 500 the whole way to retirement. We probably wouldn't show that to a client. We would try to build out a plan where they changed it to a more conservative allocation because of the impact of taking an income out of a portfolio. But that's where you can really see the impact of fees over time. It's an important conversation to have with clients if used in the right way. If you have a client that has the same exact allocation and is not paying fees, and they're going to pay you 1% for the same allocation, then by all means use it. But where I see this is people are showing it inaccurately. They're trying to show the erosion of fees over time. And I think that if you're showing a 9.87 in this case, you really have to look at straight line versus Monte Carlo. And so where we utilize this is when there's what we believe to be out of the ordinary fees. You know, if we're working on a client, and what we want to focus on is the financial plan. What we want to focus on is making good decisions, not so much their investment management. You can go use Morningstar reports for that, or you can go use portfolio analysis inside of here, or whatever else it is used for that. But we believe financial planning is what our clients are coming to us to work with in eMoney, and we want to give them a financial plan they can take and implement it with any financial planner, not just somebody that's doing their investment management. So we really need to be careful how we utilize those fees and make sure it's consistent with what we're trying to show the client. Again, I'm not telling you you shouldn't use fees. I'm not telling you when to use fees. I'm telling you our philosophy of when we use them and why we use them. Because at the end of the day, that's what your financial plan has to be supported by, the reasoning behind why you did it. So if you're going to use this feature or not use this feature, just make sure you understand this feature and understand the impact of your plan. And so in summary, what is this really doing? It really comes down to here. It's your arithmetic mean or average. It's going to take it down by your fee. Last thing I just want to point out to you here, in case you don't forget, you're going through this, you say, I don't know what the impact of fees are. When you're selecting fees for a client, it's going to tell you exactly what the impact of these fees are over here in this help box, in case you forget about what it is. In case you forget the standard deviation, it's right there in Monte Carlo, or in your asset allocation. We hope this tip helped educate and empower you to do more plans for your clients so that you can impact more lives through financial planning. If you have some great tips we don't know about, we'd love to hear about them. If you have a better way of doing what we just showed you, we'd love to hear about that, because we are a noble profession, and together